Good morning to everyone. Good morning, most especially to our head of department, Father Peter Takov, and Madam Anne, our executive assistant, who coordinates our program in here. This morning, we're going to introduce our new course, and the title is Modernity and Post-Modernity. Modernity and Post-Modernity. This is a 4-credit course, implying that we are going to have 4 hours of being in class online. We are going to see how we are going to tackle it. So I pray and I crave your indulgence that we follow it like we did with one of the texts of Aristotle for those that we work together. So our usual methodology is the same. I will through a voicemail, we listen, and whenever there are issues to raise, you can raise them and we discuss in class so that we can help each other to understand. We can learn from each other. Our discussions, they are going to enrich ourselves to understand the course more better. Thank you for your understanding. Welcome Father Elvis, who is joining us today. And we also welcome Moki Jerry, who is joining us today. So I've removed Desmond because he has complained to me that he's having, or that he will not take part in this program for this year. So I think we're going to have 5 students taking this course, modernity and post-modernity. Now, modernity and post-modernity. Philosophically, these concepts have no real boundaries. They change with time. Now we're going to look at this concept following the ancients and the modern understanding of the term modernity. From there, we are going to have the understanding of post-modernity later. Now, before we tackle the areas that we are concerned with, it is better we look at the understanding of the term modernity. And we are going to look at it from the perspective of the word modern. Modern. The ancients and their understanding of moderns. What is modern? Modern. Let me begin by defining these concepts. The term modern, I'll be calling modern here in quote. The term modern has a long history, one which has been investigated by philosophers or great men like Hans Robert Jauss. The term modern in its Latin form is modernus, modernus, and was used for the first time in the late 5th century in order to distinguish the present, which had become officially Christian, from the Roman and pagan past. Now, with varying content, the term modern again and again expresses the consciousness of an epoch. I want you to underline the word consciousness. The consciousness of an epoch that relates itself to the past of antiquity in order to view itself as a result of a transition from the old to the new. There are some key words there I want you to understand them or to underline them. Consciousness, consciousness, consciousness of an epoch. The second one, transition, transition from old to new. Transition from old to new. Some writers restrict this concept of modernity to the Renaissance, but this is historically too narrow. People often consider themselves modern during the period of Charles the Great in the 12th century. This is to say, the term modern appeared and reappeared. The term appeared and reappeared exactly during those periods in Europe when the consciousness, a new epoch, formed itself through a renewed relationship to the ancients. Again, underline the word consciousness, new. Consciousness, new. Because these are terms that we're going to see revolving or helping us to understand the term modern. The spell which the classics of the ancient world cast upon the spirit of latter times was dissolved with the ideals of the French Enlightenment. Specifically, the idea of being modern by looking back to the ancients changed with the belief inspired by modern science, the infinite progress of knowledge, and the infinite advance towards social and moral betterment. Another form of modernist consciousness was formed in the wake of this change. We are going to discuss these three, see how these three phrases they are going to help us in understanding the cause and in understanding the term modern. The first one we have highlighted is change with the belief inspired by modern science. Modern science. The second one is the infinite progress of knowledge. Progress of knowledge. Progress of knowledge. And the third is the advance towards social and moral betterment. The word advance. Advance. These three keywords they are going to help us to have an understanding of modern. Modern. So the distinguishing mark of works which count as modern is the new. New, N-E-W. Something which is new is going to help us to understand this. This is a distinguishing mark of the word modern, new. The characteristic of such works is the new which will become and made obsolete through the novelty of next style. The novelty of next style. We are going to see this word style. Style. What style do we have? What has changed? The consciousness of a new style. But why that which is merely stylish will soon become outmodern? That which is merely stylish will soon become outmodern. We are going to discuss this in the context of explaining or of trying to understand the terms consciousness and new. That which is modern preserves a secret tied to the classical. Of course, whatever can survive time has always become classic. Now let us try to understand the stress. Let us try to understand the stress or the term modern. And we're going to reflect this word from 1, consciousness, from 2, something which is new, like I already said, new and consciousness. And I'm going to give some practical examples that you and I, maybe we have gone through it, or we are still going through it, or we are experiencing it. And then we are going to see, following the understanding of the ancients, their understanding, a certain consciousness, something which is new, make people to understand that this epoch is different from this epoch. Just that which comes to mind, which makes a concept to be new, makes people to understand that they are in a certain epoch. They are in a certain era. They are in the modern era. Although, like we said, we are going to realize that this term, people consider it differently. Something which you may consider new may not be new for me. It may, let's say, it's relative, but we're going to see how people reason and have an understanding of it. So the stress or understanding of the term modern should be reflected from these two concepts. The first one is consciousness, and the second one is new, something which is new. We can visualize these concepts in the way society presents itself today, even within the context of religion, and especially the Christian religion. So what we mean here is that in the society today, you see people coming out with new ideas, new dresses, new way of living. People are conscious that we are now having this. This is the fashion that we are going through. This is what is going through. Even in the church is also conscious of some recent changes that can make the church to vibrate or to grow in such a way that it can compete with other churches. Here I'm not merely referring to the Catholic Church, although the Catholic Church is part of it. And that's why we're going to see that we have another course attached to this, which is Christianity and postmodernity. Now, what I'm handling here is modernity and postmodernity, but we are going to see the aspect of Christianity in this modern issue, or in this postmodernity issue. Now, consciousness and new. Let's go back, or for those of us who are teachers, or for those of us who have had interaction with students, we realize that today in students, we see that girls have a way they want to dress, they want to look. Likewise, the boys, students have the way they want to look differently, which will make them to look modern, in quote. What pricks their minds today that they become conscious and try to do something new? What pricks them? What makes them to have this way of thinking that they consider themselves as being in the modern era? And we are going to realize that the idea of being modern, or the idea that pricks the mind of students to look back or to look modern, is that reflecting on what we have seen with regards to the understanding of the term modern in the light of the ancients, the ancients tells us that there was change in belief inspired by modern science. Modern science. So the first thing which has made students or men and women in the society to try to see that they are in a different era is the influence of what? Modern science. The second one is progress of knowledge. Progress of knowledge. Knowledge is not stagnant. Knowledge is progressive. People understand that knowledge is progressing and nobody wants to be left behind. And the third one, having a reflection from the ancient, is an infinite advance towards social and moral betterment. The term advance. Nobody wants to be left behind. Everybody wants to move ahead. So from the ancients we have one, influence of modern science, progress of knowledge, and advance towards social and moral betterment. And I think another one which is so peculiar to everybody now is what? Social media. The media. Everybody wants to project. Social media has come and doesn't want to leave anybody behind. So because of all these terminologies, when you critically observe why society behaves the way they want to behave today, why students and even some adults dresses the way they want to dress today, it is because of their belief in the inspiration of modern science. It is because of their belief in the fact that there is progress in knowledge, and it is because of their belief in the fact that there is an advancement towards social and moral betterment, there is an advancement. Now, what is new to you? What is new? You see everyone conscious of. What is new to me, I'm also conscious of. Let's look at practical examples. Let's look at the trousers we wear today, and compare them, let's say 20 or 25 years, whether we could have been wearing those trousers. The answer is no. The answer is no. Look at the suits we wear today. I think the suit we wear today now have what we call casse. And if you can go back for around 20, 30 years, there was a certain suit we were wearing, or this suit casse had existed maybe 20, 25 years ago. And then we came now to a different suit where you just have two cuts by the side. Now we are coming back to the casse issue. What is it? It's a certain consciousness. It's a certain consciousness. Now, most people wear shoes without socks. This is practical. And trousers are not so long as they used to be. And they are not so big as they used to be. What is the reflection? What is it that has made us to have this change? It's a certain consciousness, something new. Is it the influence of social media? Is it the influence of modern science? Is it the influence of advancement or progress in knowledge? Is it the influence of the fact that there is the inspiration of progress or advancement towards the way we look at things? Can we say that these are the areas that are helping us to behave the way we are behaving today? You bear with me that the way we sew our dresses today, you realize that people make comments that we even wasted material, we wasted money. But now, is it that people are conscious that that was a waste? I think the point is that reflecting on the term modern, people have different ways of looking at things. Modern here now is seen in the sense that people are conscious that there's something which is new, a certain consciousness. And we'll go back to Hegel. Consciousness, the spirit, the mind, reasoning. All these things, they have pushed people to reflect differently. And even the church. So let's reflect on this. And if there are things that we want to share about how things have changed, how a certain consciousness or something new has come to mind to make us to have this era called modern, then we can share together. Again, let's go back to when someone say you are not modern. What is your understanding? You say you are ancient. Your shoes are ancient. What's your understanding? Your suit is ancient. What's your understanding? The person who say your shoes are ancient or your suit is ancient implies that you don't have something which is modern. Look at your ancient shoes. My shoes are modern. When someone say my shoes are modern, what's the implication? They are new. It's a certain consciousness. The way my shoes are, they are not the ones that we used to wear. So there's a certain level of consciousness that has transpired. There's a certain reflection on that which is new. And when people reflect from this perspective, they consider that era as something which is new. And the name they give to it is modern. Good morning to everyone. Good morning to our head of department and our executive assistants who are part and parcel of this class. Like I said, today we are going to round up with modernism as a concept, not as a course, as a concept. And then we'll go back to postmodernism as a concept also, and we'll see how to blend the two and see what to make out of the course. So last class we introduced modernism Today we are going to continue with modernism, and we are going to see some of the aspects of modernism. After that, we are going to blend the two. So I've highlighted what we are going to have in the two voice mails in the forum. You will see the highlights, and the highlights there reflects what we shall be discussing about. Thank you. Modernism as a revolt against conservative values. Here we are highlighting modernism as a rebellion or as revolting. And the first one is modernism as a revolt against conservative values. Already from our highlights of last class and from our introduction, we know what modernism is. Again, there were two serious concepts intimated that you should have in mind. The concept of consciousness and something new. It makes the concept of modernism to be very clear. Modernism as a revolt against conservative values. Modernism was a revolt against the conservative values of realism. The motive of modernism is the rejection of tradition and its reprise, incorporation, rewriting, recapitulation, revision, and parody in new forms. Modernism rejected the existence of a compassionate, all-powerful creator, God. In general, the term modernism encompasses the activities and output of those who felt that the traditional forms of art, architecture, literature, religious faith, social organization, and daily life were becoming outdated in the new economic, social, and political conditions of an emerging, fully industrialized world. They will see the revolt of a culture that rejects the existence of a compassionate, all-powerful creator God. So what we are saying here is that modernism rejects the culture of believing in a God or in God who is compassionate. Again, we see modernism as a rebellion against Victorian culture. Victorian culture. We are going to explain this culture. As a cultural movement, modernism is a rebellion against Victorian customs. Victorian culture emphasized nationalism and cultural absolutism. Victorians placed humans over and outside of nature. They believe in a single way of looking at the world and in absolute and clear-cut dichotomies between right and wrong, good and bad, hero and villain. Further, they saw the world as being governed by God's will, and that each person and thing in this world had a specific use. Finally, they saw the world as neatly divided between civilized in quote and savage peoples. Savage and civilized in quote. According to Victorians, the civilized were those from industrialized nations, cash-based economies, Protestant Christian traditions, and patriarchal societies. The savage, on the other hand, were those from agrarian or hunter-gathered tribes, barter-based economies, pagan or totemistic traditions, and matriarchal or at least unmanly societies. Modernists blame Victorianism for such evils as slavery, racism, imperialism, and later for World War I. Modernists emphasized humanism over nationalism and argued for cultural relativism. Modernists emphasized the ways in which humans were part of and responsible to nature. Further, they challenged the idea that God played an active role in the world, which led them to challenge the Victorian assumption that there was meaning and purpose behind world events. Instead, modernists argued that no thing or no person was born for a specific use. Instead, they found or made their own meaning in the world. Challenging the Victorian dichotomy between civilized and savage, modernists reversed the values associated with each kind of culture. Modernists presented the Victorian civilized as greedy and warmongering instead of being industrialized nations and cash-based economies. As hypocrites rather than Christians, and as enemies of freedom and self-realization instead of good patriarchs. Those that the Victorians had dismissed and subjugated as savages, the modernists saw as being the truly civilized, responsible users of their environments, unselfish and family-oriented, generous, creative, mystical, and full of wonder and egalitarian. These savages post-World War I modernists pointed out did not kill millions with mustard gas, machine guns, barbed wire, and genocidal starvation. Now, we go to modernism and literature. Modernism and literature. Literary modernism has its origin in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, mainly in Europe and North America. Modernism is characterized by a self-conscious break with traditional styles of poetry and verse. Modernists experimented with literary form and expression, adhering to the modernist maxim to, in quote, make it new. Make it new. The modernist literary movement was driven by a desire to overturn traditional modes of representation and express the new sensibilities of their time. In the 1880s, a strand of thinking began to assert that it was necessary to push aside previous norms entirely instead of merely revising past knowledge in light of contemporary techniques. Influential in the early days of modernism were the theories of Sigmund Freud, 1856 to 1939, Ernest Mach, 1839 to 1916. Modernist literature attempts to take into account changing ideas about reality developed by Darwin, Mach, Sigmund Freud, Einstein, Nietzsche, Bergson, that's Harry Bergson, and others. From this, develop innovative literary techniques such as stream of consciousness, interior monologue, as well as the use of multiple points of view. Now, this can reflect doubts about the philosophical basis of realism, or alternatively, an expansion of our understanding of what is meant by realism. So that, for example, the use of stream of consciousness or interior monologue reflects the need for greater psychological realism. World War I and the disillusionment that followed further shaped modernist views of human nature. Now, what are the differences? What are the value differences in the modern world? We are going to examine the value differences from the perspective of two columns or two eras. We have the pre-modern period and the modern period, that is in the early 20th century. Now again, pre, as we know, is before the modern period, and then the modern period proper. Now, in the value differences are as follows. In the pre-modern period, there was ordered, and in the modern period, that's the 20th century, chaos. Pre-modern period, optimism. Modern period, that's the 20th century, pessimistic. In the pre-modern period, we have meaningful, and in the modern period, futile. In the pre-modern period, stability, and in the modern period, fluctuation. Everything is fluctuating. In the pre-modern period, we have faith, and in the modern period, loss of faith. In the pre-modern period, morality/values. In the modern period, collapse of morality/values. And in the pre-modern period, we have clear sense of identity, and in the modern period, we have confused sense of identity and place in the world. Now, we look at the historical, social, and cultural highlights of the modern era. 1. The first historical or social/cultural highlight is that we have two devastating, almost global wars. Two devastating, almost global wars. That is World War I, which started from 1914 to 1918, and World War II, 1941 to 1945. 2. Huge changes in industry and technology as compared to the 19th century. 3. The rise in power and influence of international cooperations. 4. Interconnectedness across the globe, what we call globalization. We have cultural exchanges, transportation, communication, mass or popular culture from the West, with West being considered Europe and North America. 5. We have the westernization of many formerly traditional societies and nations, and a resulting change in their values, often to the detriment of the formerly traditional societies and nations. And these modern values include, that's the last thing we are talking on in modernism, these modern values include: 1. A belief in the desirability of industrialization. We have individual political rights. We have democracy. We have mass literacy and education. We have private ownership of means of production. We have the scientific method. We have public institutions like those in the West. We have middle-class Western value systems. We have a disbelief, or at least a questioning of the existence of God. And the last modern value is, and sometimes is, the emancipation of women. The emancipation of women. So this is the highlight of modernism and what we can touch under it. And it is from here that we shall cross to postmodernism, as I've indicated above. Thank you.
Good morning once more to everybody and welcome to our online classes. Our course again is modernism and postmodernism. For the past weeks, we have been handling the concept of modernism. And today we are going to introduce postmodernism, and we're going to highlight the areas that I've indicated above. In the first place, what is postmodernism? I know that with your introduction with the course on Christianity and postmodernism, when Mr. Lontom, you must have had some highlight on what this course is, what the concept postmodernism is. Now, what is postmodernism? Firstly, postmodernism was a movement in architecture that rejected the modernist passion for the new. You can remember what I expressed when I said with the concept of modernism, consciousness, and something new. Modernism is here understood in art and architecture as the project of rejecting tradition in favor of going where no man has gone before, or better, to create forms for no other purpose than novelty. Modernism was an exploration of possibilities and a perpetual search for uniqueness and its individuality. Modernism's valorization of the new was rejected by architectural postmodernism in the 50s and 60s for conservative reasons. Now, we are going to look at the summary of this movement. In a summary, we could simply outline this movement in historical terms as one, pre-modernism. In pre-modernism, we have up to 1850s. Original meaning is possessed by authority. For example, the state, the church, and here, the individual is dominated by tradition. I repeat, it is possessed by the authority. For example, the state is an authority, the church is an authority. And what is dominated here is that the individual is dominated by tradition. 2, modernism. And with modernism, it is from 1850 to 1950s. And here, the Enlightenment humanists' rejection of tradition and authority in favor of reason. At this level, the tradition, which is dominated in pre-modernism, is now being rejected. And also, the authority, which was something so primordial in pre-modernism, is now also rejected in modernism in favor of reason and natural science. This is founded upon the assumption of the autonomous individual as the sole source of meaning and truth, the Cartesian cogito. Progress and novelty are valorized within a linear conception of history, a history of a real world that becomes increasingly real or objectified. One could view this as a Protestant mode of consciousness. And the last one, which is 3, is postmodernism, which is our point of focus. Postmodernism, beginning in the 1950s. Here, we have a rejection of the sovereign autonomous individual with an emphasis upon anarchy, collective, anonymous experience, and the diversity and mystically unpresentable forces of attention. Most importantly, we see the dissolution of distinctions, the merging of subject and object, self and other. Now, what are the characteristics of postmodernism? Characteristics of postmodernism. When listing the characteristics of postmodernism, it is always important, or it is important to remember that postmodernists do not place their philosophy in a defined box. No. Their beliefs and practices are personal rather than being identifiable with a particular establishment or special interest group. And the following principles appear elemental to postmodernism. What we are referring here as principles is, or there are the characteristics. One, the first characteristic of principle is that there is no absolute truth. There is no absolute truth. Postmodernists believe that the notion of truth is a contravine illusion misused by people and special interest groups to gain power over others. So in that point, the characteristic there is that there is no absolute truth. The second characteristic of principle is that truth and error are synonymous. Truth and error are synonymous. Here, facts, postmodernists claim, are too limiting to determine anything. Changing erratically what is fact today can be false tomorrow. What is an error today can be something tomorrow to deem as it was not an error. It was something truthful. So the characteristic there is that truth and error are synonymous. The third, self-conceptualization and rationalization. Here, traditional logic and objectivity are spurned by modernists, preferring to rely on opinions rather than embrace facts. Postmodernists spurn the scientific method. Here, the characteristic or principle here is that of self-conceptualization and rationalization. The fourth, traditional authority is false and corrupt. Postmodernists speak out against the constraints of religious, morals, and secular authority. They wage intellectual revolution to voice their concerns about traditional establishment. Here, the characteristic is that traditional authority is false and corrupt. The fifth, ownership. They claim that collective ownership would most fairly administrate goods and services. Characteristic here is that of ownership. The sixth, disillusionment with modernism. Postmodernists lament the unfulfilled promises of science, technology, government, and religion. The point here is disillusionment with modernism. And here we are saying that the postmodernists lament the unfulfilled promises of science, the unfulfilled promises of technology, the unfulfilled promises of government, and the unfulfilled promises of religion. The seventh, morality is personal. Here, believing ethics to be relative, postmodernists believe ethics to be relative. Postmodernists subject morality to personal opinion, personal whims and caprices. They define morality as each person's private code of ethics without the need to follow traditional values and rules. Here, the characteristic is morality is personal. The eighth, globalization. Many postmodernists claim that national boundaries are a hindrance to human communication. Nationalism, they believe, causes wars. Therefore, postmodernists often propose internationalism and uniting separate countries. Here, the characteristic is that of globalization. The ninth, all religions are valid. All religions are valid. Valuing inclusive faiths, postmodernists gravitate towards New Age religion. They denounce the exclusive claims of Jesus Christ as being the only way to God. Now, the characteristic here is all religions are valid. 10. Liberal ethics. Liberal ethics. Postmodernists defend the cause of feminists and homosexuals. Now, with postmodernist denunciation of this, sex stories are rampant. Certain things are not a secret again. Parents giving children out for sex is something common. Now, the characteristic there is liberal ethics. And the 11th, which is the last, is pro-environmentalism, defending Mother Earth. Postmodernists blame Western society for its destruction, defending Mother Earth, defending Mother Earth. And here we can make allusion to Laudato Si of Pope Francis, that encyclical written on the 24th of May 2015. Laudato Si, meaning on care for our common home. And again, if we can take a little bit to Laudato Si, we realize that Laudato Si is Pope Francis' encyclical on the environment, or more formally, on care for our common home. Laudato Si means praise be to you, which is the first line of a canticle by St. Francis that praises God with all his creation. The environment praises God with all his creation. From the outset, Pope Francis states the goal of the document. In this encyclical, I would like to enter into dialogue with all people about our common home. With all people about our common home. Normally, papal documents are addressed to the bishops of the church or the lay faithful, but similar to Pope St. John the 23rd's Pacem in Terris, Pope Francis addressed his message to all the people, to all the people. And here, the striking thing worth noting is that taking care of the environment is for everyone, is to everyone, according to the intimations of Pope Francis. And therefore, the goal of the dialogue, we're still on Laudato Si, is, quoting Francis, I urgently appeal then for a new dialogue about how we are shaping the future of our planet. We need a conversation that includes everyone, since the environment challenge we are undergoing and its human roots concern and affects us all. The above is the heart of the document, but Pope Francis also has a very striking call to conversion for those in the church as well, dash ecological conversion. Here we are making more emphasis on this because we are talking about the care for the environment, which is one of the striking characteristic of postmodernism. So this is what I prepare for us today. I want us to go through it. We make contributions, we interact. Wherever is possible, we make comments so that at the end, we should be able to understand, one, the historical context of postmodernism, the characteristics of postmodernism, what is postmodernism, and linking it to Laudato Si on the environment, which is one of the principles or characteristics of postmodernism. Thank you for your understanding. The ball is on our court for a fruitful discussion on what we have today. Thank you.